Hey everyone, a really popular lesson right now is to take a topic and turn it into an escape room, and students absolutely love this. You get 100% buy-in with your kids when you do an escape room, as long as they're in the right level. I have a teacher in our building. She is making escape rooms, and she actually has bought physical locks. Like, she's got word locks, she's got combination ones. There are some keys which she hides around her room, and those are really cool. They are a lot of detail work, and there's kind of an overhead because you also have to buy like locking containers as well, and she's got quite a bit of money into her locks. So I have a way to make a digital one that requires nothing that's going to cost money, and you can actually keep this and share it without a lot of overhead. And plus, it would be really easy to turn this into something that actually has like a physical lock with it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is I like to use PowerPoint. Google Slides is nice, but you don't have as many background choices, and you don't have as much like maneuverability with like text and adding and drawing and shapes. So I recommend using PowerPoint or something similar to get started. You could get by with slides. And then what you want to do is you want to start laying out what types of questions and how they're going to work. So I'm doing this escape room on waves, and so I have determined that each section is going to be called a wave. And I'll kind of scroll through my slide shorter here. And so you can see each wave has a series of questions associated with it, and I know I'm going quick because I want to get down to the bottom here. And then these are the end slides for each one. So I'll show you how to get these pictures or pictures like these in just a moment, but I want to talk briefly about where to begin. So yep, we want to start laying out questions, but we also need to have an outcome as to where we're going. So these are what the students are going to be seeing. They're going to need these on a piece of paper so that they can write down their code as they go through it, kind of as a handout, or maybe digitally, but like I said, I think the paper handout works better. So we need to create pictures. So what I did was I went out and I found 2 or 3 pictures to get me started, and then as I was continuing going through, I added more pictures when I thought of them. But I decided that I wanted to have 4 waves, and so I then decided how many questions per wave that I wanted, and I automatically made all of those slides. And so you can see we have 18 slides minus the intro slide and my setup slide, so there's actually 16 slides here that are going to be something for the students to do. And then I just added blank slides all the way through, and I filled them in later. And then I started going out and I went and got my pictures, because even though I might have an idea for questions, as I'm setting up those questions, they can't all just be like A, B, C, or D. You kind of have to tweak them. So for instance, my first picture, I thought of a Rubik's Cube, and instead of asking the students A, B, C, D questions, I asked them for a color. So let's go back up and I'll show you what I mean by that. So on this question here, which is wave 1, they have to pick the correct answer, which you see here, but then instead of them getting a color, they get, or I'm sorry, instead of them getting a letter, they get a color. And then that color, they have to look at their, oops, I'm minimizing stuff here. They have to look at their picture handout and determine what letter that is. And then we have to have a code. So then that letter translates to the code. So we're just adding a step here with them translating that color into a letter, but it's one spot where kids can kind of get hung up, and that's part of the fun of an escape room, is that they have to go back and then change those colors. And plus, this way it allows us to have many different color options, and those can match up with letters. So then they write the code here, and I'll show you what my slide, this is what I actually handed out to my students. I printed this out for them so that they could fill it in as they went, and then this code has to unlock something. So before we get to show you where the pictures are, I'm going to show you what this actually unlocks. So let's go down and I'll show you my answer key right here. So this code is CBCD, and so I'm going to go on to my Google form. So I have a Google form created that looks like this, and if we go into preview mode, I have this set up so that anybody can access it as long as they have the link, but you have to have the code to move on. So the first question is just welcome to the escape room, click next, And then we have this here, and we have to type in our answer. So if we remember right, that code was CBCD, CBCD, and we'll click next. So it allows us to go next, but I want to show you that it doesn't work. So I'm going to put another D in here if I get it wrong. So error not there, and then in my error message I just put in all caps, no spaces. This message is going to appear until you enter the correct answer. And then so I'm going to backspace on that, click next, and so that's the correct answer, and I move on to the next picture. And I can't move on to the next one until I've got that code correct, which means I have to go back and answer another series of questions, which what I did for them is I printed out stations from around the room, and they had to move around the room, and they could either work in pairs or by themselves, and I had a prize for that first one to show it to me, and if they worked in a group they just had to split the prize. So let's talk about where we get these pictures first. You kind of have to think ahead, like, how do I want this to work? I used a picture of a Rubik's Cube, and then I translated the colors to a letter. And then I used a telephone, and I'm actually kind of proud of this one. I translated letters to numbers, which really stumped the kids. So let me show you what I mean on this. Since most of the kids have never had to text using the standard like keypad, like I grew up texting, they had no idea how to do this, and they had to like really think about it. So that's a wave 2 question. And so a sound wave is a mechanical wave, so this would be letter G. And so then they had to look at the picture, and this is where they got confused. They're like, okay, these are all numbers, where do I find the letters? And so then they eventually figured out, okay, so G must be 4. And then I added in a little trick, another trick here, is that they also had to answer question 9 and then add them together to get the 4th digit of the code and then enter the code here. So they ended up with this number, which I can't remember what it is. So here's the answers for it. So 4 plus 5 would equal 9. And so then they translated that 4th digit over here. You just have to make sure if you do some format like this that you don't have a 2-digit number unless you do an example like my third question here. Question 8 and question 7 both combine to be the 2nd and 3rd digit, so the end code is 5279. Any place where you can put like a little hiccup in the code is going to frustrate the kids in a good way and encourage them to go back and like relook at their questions because they want to be the first ones done. All right, so let's get on to where I found these pictures. So I just was thinking of ways to stump the kids, and so I thought Rubik's Cube, telephone, a Scrabble. I was actually hoping for a whole picture of a whole Scrabble board, but I couldn't find one that I could use. And then this sign right here. And then I've got this one that's actually not part of this lesson, but I'm going to make it part of this one. So I don't have anything written in here. I'm going to make a bonus wave. And then we can use like some sort of travel around here. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to use it, but I loved this map, and so I grabbed it, and I'm going to use it somehow. So I'm going to show you the websites that I use for this, or website that I mostly use. Let's see. You can go to any search engine you'd like. I'm still in caps here. And you just type in public domain images. And there's a lot of them out there. I really like this website here, this Pexels. And another idea I'll give you right now is I'd like to use playing cards. Because playing cards are pretty cool. They've got a number and a suit and a color. So you can kind of be descriptive and do some sort of riddle there, like this color or this number is red and it has a heart. And so then it'll narrow their choices down for them. And so the trick is just finding one that kind of works for you. So let's see. I was on here earlier and I found one. It's cards. All right. Oh, this is the one I was looking for. All right, so I like this one mostly because I can actually write my questions right in the middle of it. But this is the really important part. So if you're going to put this lesson on something like Teachers Pay Teachers, or you're going to make this so that others can use it, and even you're just presenting this to your students. You really have to make sure that these pictures are not copyrighted, that they are in the public domain, or that they do have carry some sort of Creative Commons that's going to fit your needs. So on this website, I just click on the info button, and you can see that she's got this listed as a free to use. And if you go down, oops, here we are. I'm assuming it's a woman. She's got, I think that's her profile picture there. She's saying that this is a free to use and there's no attribution required, but we can learn more about the license. Let's click on that. And I do this for all the pictures because I don't want to get sued. So all the photos on here are free to use. Attribution is not required, so they know that when they post this, but you can also modify it. So I like to give credit where credit is due, and you'll notice that when I could find somebody's picture, I did put that on those slides. I gave them some attribution down at the bottom. If it said we didn't need it, then sometimes I don't worry about it. But I like this picture, so I might pick this one, and then we could do something like saying, you know, this is a spade, and then they have to translate that, and of course they'll have to look through and find spades and then maybe match that up with the number. So there's some sort of riddle that we can do here to kind of make it. But that's where I go to find my pictures, and the ideas I just happen to stumble upon, or I think about them through the day. So the really important part here is, how do we set up that Google form? I'm a big Google form guy. I use them a lot, so I've gotten pretty good at them. So let me show you some of my tricks. Here it is. So okay, when we get into our Google Forms, what we're going to want to do is we're going to click on the settings button, and we want to make sure that our settings are what we want them. So for mine, I don't want to collect email addresses because I'm hoping to share this with some other people in some other districts, so I don't want that. I do not want to require any sort of sign-in, so I'm going to make sure that box is unchecked, and that's always checked by default in my district. I do not want to limit to one response because there might be a teacher who wants to use this over and over again, and I don't want to have to share permissions with her, so just limit it to as many as they want. And then respondents, again, they can edit it. Sure, they can go back and retype stuff in. So if your students are working on it multiple days, that can help them out there as well. And then I do want to see a summary of charts and text responses because this kind of helps me if there are any errors to figure out where they're at. And then let's go to our presentation. I definitely don't want to shuffle the question order. That's going to mess up everything. And I don't need any sort of link on there. But I do kind of like that progress bar to help the students. So let's look at the quizzes. So I want to make this a quiz because I want to make sure that I have the ability to make a field required. And that's a big part. And so when I'm done, I'm going to click the Save button. And then I'm going to go back to my Waves edition. So first question, make sure we've got it set up correctly. I just put something silly here to get the kids just as an intro screen, and then we go to that first wave. So the first direction is just unscramble the Rubik's Cube. They're going to open this up. They have to have this link on their slide, which they do on mine. I hand it out on the very first slide of mine. I give them directions on how to get there. So the simulator that they're going to use, and then I actually have them figure out the bit.ly link that I created. And so they have to use the simulation to figure out the frequency, and then the frequency is the last two numbers in the bit.ly link, which happens to be 55. And so then that bit.ly link will take them to this form. And so now when I'm looking at the form, I want to make sure that I create a short answer. I want to insert a picture, which I've done here, and then my short answer text, that's where the students type in, but I also want to change it to regular expression, so that looks like this. So regular expression, and then we have to change this checking to matches because it has to match exactly, and that's how we create this sort of like password field. And then we'll type in whatever we want to match there. So that's our code, and it is case and space sensitive, so we want to make sure that we've typed it in correctly. And then I put in an error message to tell the students, like when they get it wrong, hey, this has to be all caps, no spaces, and the message is going to appear until you enter the right code. So that kind of saves them coming, oh, it's not, it's broken, it's broken. No, it's not. You've got a space after it, or you've definitely got the wrong code. And then I want to make sure that this box is checked. I don't care about the points, and I'm good to go to the next section. So then once they go to wave 2, then it's the same process. Title it, put a picture in, give them a spot to answer that question, and if we actually click on this question, we can see again it should be regular expression, matches, and then we put our code in here. And then again, we're going to put in that error message. Same thing for wave 3, wave 4, and then what I usually do is I put a congratulations screen at the end and I just say show your teacher, something generic. And then we're done. So the Google form is actually pretty simple to set up. Most of the work happens in this PowerPoint. So like I said before, just a quick summary. Set up your slides first, kind of pan out how many questions you're going to have in each, in my case, wave or stages. And then before you start answering all those questions, do yourself a favor, get those pictures that are going to act as your check marks, and then start critiquing how they're going to work. So like, for example, again, my Rubik's Cube, I used a color to a letter. My keypad, I used a number to a letter. I'm sorry, I used a letter to a number, and then we did some addition, and I even have some multiplication in here. And then I have a Scrabble. My Scrabble board, you'll notice that the letters have a number on them for a word score, and so then for this one they just had to make a total word score, so they looked at the alphabet and then they totaled up their word score. I'll scroll down to my answer key here for you so you can see how that works. So then this score was 14, and then you add those all together and you got a total word score of 58, which they punch in for the key. And then my last one that I did was destinations. So how far away things were, so they had to come up with their answers of their questions, gave them a distance in miles, and then that distance matched up with some distance on this or some location on this signpost. And then you add up the total miles of those 3 destinations, and that's our code. So there's lots of checks there, there's lots of places to make mistakes, and that's what you want in a Google or in an escape room, because they have to figure out those little parts, and if they get a question wrong, it screws the whole stage up and they know they have to go back and fix it. And the last thing that I want to remind you is make sure that you have your images tagged, particularly if you're using images that are copyrighted. Make sure that you can use them, 1, and that 2, you're using them in the correct way. And then of course, don't forget to set up your Google form. Make sure that you use that text matches so that you're kind of creating like a password. And I do have another video on using that Google form as well. I hope this helped, and good luck making some great escape rooms.